Thank you so much. Now, before I get started, let me share my screen and hope that this works. And
good. I can see it.
All right, here we go.
There we go.
So, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to highlight the grant initiative and the activities that may be required post-grant funding. My name is Laura Everingham Price, the Director of Strategic Partnerships, and with me is my colleague, John Gillespie and Sam Malhotra. I am super excited to be able to see many of you again and continue working in an area that benefits local government, which I have always been so passionate about. And thank you so much to Michael and MACo and Teresa and MML for hosting this webinar. As you all know, EV sales in the US are at an all-time high. By 2024, 2 out of 10 cars will be full electric vehicles. A robust network of EV charging stations and outlets is the key to meeting the growing demand in cities and counties across the nation. In the 2021 Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the BIL, the federal government committed $7.5 billion to states and local governments to build out an additional 500,000 EV chargers across the US. With the volley of EVs coming to communities, jurisdictions of all sizes need to be ready to tackle this challenge. You've heard about the grants, and they are specifically designed for building out the EV infrastructure across the nations. The first is the NEVI grant, the National EV Initiative, and it's a $7.5 billion grant specifically designed for states, which includes $2.5 billion specifically designed for local governments, and that's the CFI grant that you just heard about. We are here to help explain how EV charging as a service, or EVCaaS, is a more effective way to implement your EV infrastructure. Through the NEVI initiative, Maryland has already identified its alternative fuel corridors, and many of these corridors are already running through your jurisdictions. There are over 68,000 EVs in Maryland with only 3,700 public chargers. Nearly not enough, and with more traveled corridors, many of these chargers are also being used by transiting EVs across the state. Nationally, there are about 5.6% of all vehicles are now EVs. In California, they're already at 17%. But in Maryland, we're at less than 2%, and we have some catching up to do. And with that, I'll turn it over to John.
Thanks, Laura. I've go to market for ezVOLTz, and I appreciate everyone taking the time today. Received your grant, we can certainly help you actually between now and the end of the month to make sure you've considered everything for your grant. But once you've received your grant, a whole slew of complex activities really need to take place. The most complex is developing a strategy and an operational plan to manage the EV charging infrastructure. There are many examples across the nation where EV chargers were installed without a plan and created a network with a lot of issues. There are several options to consider as you're looking at your EV infrastructure, and that's really what ezVOLTz can help with. If you look at the current landscape in the EV charging arena, there are several charge point operators, which typically are very charger-centric, manufacturer-based networks. And there's a lot of advantages with this in that they will actually come in and outsource this whole entire function for you. There are challenges, however, in the event of needing to have visibility and provide the kind of access that you really would want to provide as a solution operator. And there's advantages to this, but there's a lot of other opportunities in the model that we're going to propose next. Can you move to the next slide, Laura?
So either way, you have several whether you chose a proprietary vendor or EVCaaS, both are going to manage your infrastructure. This slide shows a good representation of the alternative fuel corridors across the state. The real issue is that each one of these chargers belong to a proprietary network, creating silos. For local governments, it's an even bigger issue, giving you no flexibility as to how and where you want to site chargers in your jurisdiction. You can't collect data if you don't own your own chargers. An EVCaaS provider can help with that. We'll go through the EVCaaS discussion in later slides. So each one of these yellow dots is a charger station, and it's a node on a network where none of these nodes are talking to each other, leaving you and your residents in the dark as to which of these chargers are even operational and when they will be up and running. So the other thing is that since they're proprietary, they're taking the profits and they're putting it in for you and they're taking the profits. So there's no revenue being generated for the local jurisdictions. There's no ability to set your own pricing for the different demographics that you might want to do. Again, there's no way to know if that charger is even operational. There's no visibility into the Justice 40 areas that are a requirement of the grant. And there's no data collection for making better informed decisions, and no ability to manage your fleet resources. There is a better way to handle this chaos. John?
Thanks, Laura. EV charging as a service takes the chaos out and helps with the management and governance of your entire EV infrastructure. There's a software platform that works in cohesion with the charger infrastructure and hardware to create a centralized, optimized, and interconnected platform for all of your EV infrastructure. EV charging as a service providers bring the local government a full life cycle of EV charging, from site selection, utility engagement, pulling permits, designing, engineering, hardware selection, software implementation, and 24/7 maintenance. For local governments, this model actually has a lot of advantages and provides a low risk way to install, manage, and monetize your EV charging infrastructure.
So EVCaaS transfers the burden of ownership, maintenance, and technology from your jurisdiction to a full lifecycle provider of EV infrastructure versus locking your jurisdiction into a proprietary network. The EVCaaS provider offers a secure and carefree EV charging solution with greater flexibility to the electric vehicle ecosystem. It truly is the best option for local governments to deploy their EV charging infrastructure. And finally, EVCaaS allows you to have your own jurisdiction's EV charging infrastructure and branding that a proprietary network does not allow you to do. John?
Thanks, Laura. So deploying an EV charging infrastructure is a complex project. There's many moving parts, and it requires great understanding of many disciplines. Typically, there are 4 major steps in deploying and managing a successful EV infrastructure. We will be able to work together with you from a strategy perspective to create an operational plan and move to the design phase, where we'll provide the utility engagements, help you select the sites, help you select the right hardware for the right type of area, and then provide the engineering plans to help you in the design phase. Everything from helping you design, make sure you have the right installers set up and implement it, pull the cable, et cetera. We will work with you along the whole way to be able to provide that. And then once it's implemented, we will provide you the whole ability to manage, bill, and provide and manage the service accordingly. And then dynamic load management, which is really in the 4th issue. This is a critical area to help you manage the power and make sure that the capability is optimized for your EV charging infrastructure. Next slide, please.
Obviously, the description was at a very high level because it gets very complex in the execution of all those activities that John just described. So proprietary networks do not allow you to be in control of the pricing for your residents. In other words, if you want to set different pricing structures for different demographics, the only way to do that is working with EVCaaS to build your own EV charging network. Every local government can set levels of pricing for their residents, a different price for non-residents, a different price for disadvantaged communities, another price structure for veterans, and another price structure for government employees, either using their own vehicles or using the government fleet. I love this slide because I'm all about filling potholes for those of you who know me. And in order to do that, we need revenue. And so EVCaaS allows you to monetize your charging infrastructure. And it's the only way to have the flexibility to choose what to do with that margin. With the EVCaaS model, a jurisdiction can replace highway user revenues. And we all know what a struggle that has been for nearly 15 years and how hard MACo and MML fought to get back just some of the 90% we lost prior to 2010. We call that filling the pothole. So for fleet management, which includes your sheriff deputy cars, roads vehicles, and bus fleets, the back office software provides a tool for energy consumption and vehicle miles traveled to assist with life cycle monitoring, which feeds directly to your fleet management offices. And for billing and capturing costs by departments, the software will feed straight to your finance offices. I think that'll make your finance directors really happy. And as I mentioned, the local governments can then offer special pricing for the residents, disadvantaged, and rural communities. And on data, governments love data. By owning and branding your own infrastructure, your users have registered, and that data is then collected and utilized to make more informed decisions. Imagine how that can help expand your tourism and economic development, among many other opportunities. John?
Hey, really, in summary, ezVOLTz has extensive experience working with federal grants, and we can help you make sure you've considered everything as you're in this funding phase. Once you get your grant funding, we can also help you design, implement, and execute the best possible charging infrastructure that will prepare you for the future. Let us help you develop your overarching strategy and operational plan and build the best EV infrastructure possible. We're available for a chat if you, at really any point. Happy to sit down with you and brainstorm and help you be ready for this EV wave that's coming. We appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. And we are happy to go out and visit all of you in person. I know that I had a blast last year with Michael going out and visiting and doing all the county tours, and I'd love to do it again with ezVOLTz and help get a little bit more in depth of how this can help work for your jurisdiction. So just send us an email, give us a call, and we'd be happy to come out and visit with you. Or we can send you some more information via email if you prefer. Don't forget that application deadline is May 30th, which is just a month away. So back to you, Michael.
Well, thank you very much to Laura and John for the outline of how this could come together as sort of a network and as a broader service than merely when you get a grant, you put up a station, that sort of thing. A couple questions in the chat. Number one, I think some of our attendees would like to see a copy of your presentation from today. Is that something that we can share in our follow-up with registrants?
Sure can. I've already emailed it to Sophia.
Terrific. So we'll push to do that. And the second one, I'm sure you'll be happy to field, is if there already is some charging infrastructure in your community, do you have to start from scratch if they work with you, or do you integrate that? And I know the answer.
Go ahead, Laura.
We absolutely can integrate it. So the technology, I believe, and Don is going to probably follow up with this, is OCCP, Open Charge Network. And so there can be agreements where the things that are already on the ground can all talk to each other. There is certain requirements of these charge point networks, and they would also feed into it. We didn't talk much about the driver-facing app, which will be free to download. So all of that, that's the data collection that I spoke of. So wherever they charge, if they're registered with the free ezVOLTz app, all that then feeds through the network and into the back office. John, you want to finish up that?
Yeah, I mean, the key thing is that the EV infrastructure arena has adopted standards. Like most major technologies, when they're early, there's not many standards, and then standards come along and then everything works together. So there's a standard called Open Charge Point Protocol that almost all charging stations today support. So the ezVOLTz platform can manage not just, and we're not in the charging manufacturing business for chargers. So we work with almost every charger. So if you already have chargers deployed from other vendors, as long as they're standards compliant, and if they've been built in the last 4 years, typically they are, we can actually have them as a part of the ezVOLTz network.
Okay. Are there other questions from folks in the room? I'm happy to have you use the raise hand feature, or if you just want to squeak up, that would be fine as well. But I'm sure John and Laura would be happy to field more questions if you've got them. Okay, so as we have pledged, we will follow up to folks who registered for today's event. We will provide the presentation material from ezVOLTz that gives you some of that detail, and that includes contact information for both Laura and John. It looks like there may be one last question in the chat that Fernando pulled together. Okay, so an interesting question that I'm interested in as well. The question is basically, what's the bait on the hook for the various providers who already have their stations up and running to get onto the network if someone were to go with ezVOLTz? What's the process for them getting on board? What makes them do it?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. First, we should engage and talk, but the process is fairly, it's fairly easy. It really takes ourselves understanding what they already have in place, and then looking at the best way to fold it into our capability. And it really just takes a conversation. It's not overly complex, I think.
But some of this is just enlightened self-interest of whether it's a commercial enterprise or whomever, being on your app. If a community works with ezVOLTz and says we want to get our residents and our public employees all using this app to find where's the nearest charging station that I can go. Is it ready right now? Great, I can be there in 10 minutes and it's available and it's compatible with my vehicle and so forth. It serves their interest because it'll drive traffic their way. So there's a simple market motivation as well as just the simplicity of collaboration.
I agree, Michael. It's almost like not being listed on Google, right? If you've got, imagine, you've got Exxon stations, Shell stations thinking about gas, and someone's looking for the nearest station. And if you choose not to be listed, then they're not going to go there. And so, yeah, they can, whatever proprietary network is operational, only if you have that proprietary app, you'll go there, but you're going to be missing the boat. They're going to be missing the boat if they're not on quote unquote the Google search, which will incorporate everything.
Yeah, I think it's important to know that our ezVOLTz app, it shows every charging resource in the nation. So it's not just ours, it's anybody's charging infrastructure. So we can do turn-by-turn navigation to any charging resource.
Yeah.
When you get to that resource, if it's an ezVOLTz charger, you can charge right from the app. But if it's a third party, you got to download their app, and then you've got to manage the charging, and it can take 15 minutes when you get there. And you end up having multiple apps on your phone. It can be painful. But we really, from the ezVOLTz app, you can navigate to and see any resource in the nation.
Okay, so I know we had asked folks for an hour of their time, and we're closing toward the end of that. I think we're in a good place after today's conversation. I will just say, I think I'm speaking on behalf of our friends from the Maryland Municipal League as well. We wanted to make sure our local governments had an opportunity to learn about this grant opportunity and what resources are out there to help them put in a strong and effective application for it, whether it's by themselves or as part of a concatenated group. So I like that as part one. I also very much like the idea of helping you visualize how this could look, whether it's with ezVOLTz as a partner or through some other means, but the idea that this is not simply just, let's go build a charging station. It may be, let's build the means to make this work for our employees, for our residents, and so forth. And I gotta say, I find it tantalizing, the idea that the local government could be the lead player to make this more approachable for your community, for your residents, folks who are hesitant about the presence of charging stations. How do we get to grandma's house in an electric vehicle? Some of that burden is just the mental, I don't know where I'm going to go get a charger. And an app that can find them all the way from here to Poughkeepsie, it could be one of those things that gets people more on board. And then if your jurisdiction says we want to help supplement the costs for charging for people for a year or for forever and do it in this community or among that group of residents, maybe all the better. So a lot of tools in your toolbox if you visualize this program the way you just heard.